In this episode, I sit down to speak with Stuart Hillhouse, Head of Content at Mutiny. In this episode, we went deep into how we can use AI to supercharge our content marketing workflows. And especially interesting was the 5 stages of AI maturity. And it's a really interesting way to think about how we can use AI in our general content marketing workflows and how we should be thinking beyond using AI just as a mere chatbot or assistant to help us with our copywriting. I think it's really interesting and it opens our minds to all of the possibilities and the ways that we can be using AI to supercharge our productivity but not replace our creativity. The other thing that I thought was really interesting from this episode in particular was the way that Stuart thinks about their strategy in 2 parts. One, the always-on approach, knowing that that's not going to give them the big leaps that they need, but it will have that baseline sustaining effect on their overall strategy. That always-on stuff will be the things that we always talk about, like your podcast, your webinars, your day-to-day content marketing that ultimately is there to build a brand, create demand, etc. But the other side of it that I thought was very interesting, and the approach that Mutiny has, is that once a quarter they do that big campaigns, those big campaigns designed to move the needle only once a quarter, but real creative big swings. I thought that was a really nice way to rationally think about our always on activity, maintaining that steady baseline, but then using some big swings on top to drive growth. I really hope you enjoy this episode and look forward to hearing what you think about it. Stuart, thank you so much for taking a bit of time to join me today. Really appreciate you coming on this podcast. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff we're going to talk about today. So firstly, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Andy. I got married last week, so that was a big fun milestone.
Oh, I had no idea. I should have been more prepared with that. That's amazing. Massive congratulations. I love it.
Oh no, yeah, it was really special. It was, I'm sure everyone's experienced this who's gotten married, but like it was legitimately trippy to see all your like best friends and your family members from all parts of your life in the same room at the same time. You're like, in what universe do all these people overlap? And the answer is in your universe. And so that was just pretty cool and special for both of us. So yeah, really enjoying that.
That's incredible. Makes me miss my wedding day because I had the same feeling. What an incredible experience. And to be honest, I was saying to my wife, I'm like, we need to do like our 10-year wedding anniversary. Just basically get remarried again because I want to do it again because it's such an incredible time. So I'm massive congrats, man. I'm so pleased for you. So it seems like it's only going to go downhill from here, talking about weddings and marriage and amazing parties. And we're going to talk about B2B content marketing. But hey, what the podcast is about, so let's get into it. So give the viewers a bit of a sense as to like your background, your journey into marketing, what you do now, because I think how you got into what you do now is actually quite an interesting story. Anyway, Stuart, so
yeah, absolutely. I had no prior credentials getting into marketing. I studied forestry in school, and so I had a previous career walking through the woods counting trees in remote parts of Canada. So when I realized that I wanted to have a laptop career instead of like an outdoor career, there was a few steps in there, and one of the main ones was sort of realizing that I really did like talking about the problems that customers were having and sort of understanding, what they're thinking about and why they're thinking it, and getting into the nitty-gritty of stuff. But I, early on, I'd started some like consulting sort of startup, and what I realized is I didn't really like doing the work of solving the problem. I just like talking about the problems. And when I asked someone, what I should do next, they're like, well, I think that sounds like marketing. That was sort of my my direction to run towards marketing. And I got into content because I wanted to start a podcast just to get to know people. I don't live in a major city, so I wanted to still feel connected and understand the power of like virtual networking and things like that. And I found that, probably starting a podcast would be the easiest and fastest way to get my foot in the door into this industry. And after recording a bunch of episodes and not really knowing what I'm doing, but sort of just copying what, other podcasters were doing, one of the guests sort of like offered me a job. And I was kind of like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, well, do this, but for my company. It's like, well, what is this? And he's like, this is content marketing. So that was my, accidental entry into content marketing. And since then have sort of cut my teeth at a few newsletter businesses. So Why We Buy, which is written by Caitlin Burgoyne, I helped her come up with that concept and sort of get that newsletter off the list. And now it's a hugely successful newsletter with that studies customer psychology and behaviors and buying behaviors. And then from there went to Demand Curve, which worked more in the growth marketing space and had a massive audience. So I was a copywriter at both those companies. And that brought me to Mutiny, where I am now as head of content. And that started off, when I started, I kind of, my DNA was let's get a newsletter going, and let's create content that is narrative driven and really taps into the customer psyche. And so that's what I've done for the last 3 years. And then AI kind of came on the scene in a big way in 2022 for me, at least. And that's really changed how I see my role and the role that I feel content plays in the marketing and go-to-market function. And I think we're going to get into a lot of details about that because that's sort of the area that I'm most interested in right now.
Yeah, super interesting. I always find it fascinating listening to other people's journeys into marketing, and it's never a linear process. It's always squiggly and like, ended up in marketing, then found I loved it, and then guess what? Now I'm head of content or CMO or whatever, and it's such a fascinating journey in the marketing world. I love it. And it also speaks volumes of like, sometimes just being the change you want to see, just starting a podcast, just getting it done. Like nothing really stops you from learning the act of doing content marketing or being a marketer. And I think that's, when you hear stories like yours, it's quite liberating, really, especially if people are early on in their careers, because, it's the best way to get started is just by literally starting by yourself. So I love that.
It's always frustrating but useful advice to give to people early in their careers or wanting to get into marketing. It's like, how do I do it? I'm like, well, you just do it. You just start and you do it for free and you do it under your own name and you do it in a topic that you're interested in. And that's, 99% of people won't take that advice, but the 1% who do, it's like the fastest on-ramp into a really, fulfilling and creative career, I feel.
Yeah, love that take. So let's start with some of the experiences at Mutiny then first, and I'd love to know, and for the viewers that don't know Mutiny already, it'd be good to get a good sense or a high level sense of what Mutiny is all about, and also really curious about like the primary routes to market, the real growth levers that you lean on to grow this B2B.
Yeah, for sure. Mutiny, for a quick intro, is a web personalization platform that go-to-market teams use to deliver really fluid and really clean buyer experiences for their target accounts. And so we've kind of taken the best practices of A/B testing and web personalization, and we're now applying it with a layer of AI that allows you to create buyer journeys for your target accounts that is completely tailored to them. And this is evolving every month as AI becomes better and better. But essentially, it means that your entire go-to-market team, so your sales and marketing, and then eventually customer experience and customer success, are all working from the same data set and the same experience, so that your customers are landing on your website. But there's a whole bunch of different contexts of when a person lands on your website. When you're an early stage prospect, you have no idea what this company does, and you just somehow found out about them. Maybe later in the sales journey, you get an email from a sales rep, and it takes you back to the website. And then past the point of purchase, and you're now a customer, you're still going to go to a company's website to find resources or to go to educational things like that. So by knowing, by being able to understand who is on your site and what account they belong to, and then tie that to CRM data of like, here's the stage that this account is at, here are the buyers that we know about, here are the people involved in conversations, you're able to give them a website experience that isn't redundant or like starts them from the beginning all the time. It is actually like tailored to the whole context of their account and their buying experience. And so it's a really exciting time. We're building a lot of really interesting stuff that's unifying sales and marketing, because we see that that's a huge opportunity right now, because it's kind of everyone's tried to do it, but now it's really possible. and go to and frankly, just in the environment in which a lot of software companies find themselves right now, you need to think about the whole go-to-market motion, not just fulfilling marketing MQLs and like running towards metrics that you care about, because we're seeing that actually the account-based motions are what is standing out right now and delivering real results, because frankly, there's just not a lot of buying happening, in the current environment. So you need to be very specific on who you're targeting and go after them with a unified strategy between sales and marketing. And that is really, what's driving a lot of the growth at our business right now.
That's really interesting. So there's a very, very targeted list of customers that you're going after with Mutiny. And obviously it makes sense when you're a business that provides software that helps like leverage ABM. You're doing that too. Yeah.
Yep.
You'd
Yeah.
hope to be the case. So yeah, give us a sense of some of the other levers. So of course you got target account lists. Yes, you're aligning sales and marketing, tailored journeys on the website, makes perfect sense. And then from like a content marketing, like top of funnel type of stuff, like give us a sense of what you're doing there.
Yeah. The way I'm seeing content marketing now and how it can support an ABM motion is content is still the most efficient and scalable way to reach your target audience at scale. And AI has enabled that, has made that even more clear, that you can create this sort of air cover where people are still, are becoming aware of your brand and are seeing your stuff on social and getting invited to your events and subscribe to your newsletter and seeing you on podcasts. Like that is the air cover that creates awareness and understanding of, that this company exists, and roughly gives it mind share of like where in your brain you should place this, new business that you've learned about, so that when the time is right, based on however you're modeling your target accounts, it might be a while until that target account is actually a priority. So in the meantime, your content creates the air cover. And then when it comes time for your team to actively pursue that account, it's going to be a much cleaner and faster connection of, oh yeah, I've seen Mutiny on that podcast, I've subscribed to their newsletter, and now I have someone actively reaching out to me, and they're, it's a person, it's not, blasting, AI generated BDR language everywhere. It's like actually time to talk, because there was, a trigger moment that made it so that account was now qualified and ready to go. So that's how I'm seeing content. It is a lot of, I've switched my mind on this, where sometimes people really think that, they want to believe that content is a business driver within the org. And I've switched my mind to being like, no, I think content is in service of the sellers of your company. The stuff we do is absolutely impactful and absolutely necessary, but it's, at the end of the day, if you're selling enterprise software, it's based on a phone call or an in-person meeting or a video call that is going to get the buyer from a interested maybe to a yes, let's actually spend some energy, I'm going to get budget, I'm going to start pushing this, at least in the way things are done. And so that is where the revenue rubber meets the road. You should still measure how your content is influencing that and impacting that. But the way I now think about it is like everything I put out needs to be in service to making it easier and faster and better for our prospects to engage with a seller and to get that deal rolling. And so with that change of mindset, and now focusing on an account-based motion versus like a broad reach demand gen motion, you're actually, the types of content and the cadence in which you publish content and the topics you cover, it kind of changes the whole strategy compared to what, a lot of, the 2017 playbook of, doing a lot of blog posts and trying to drive traffic that way. It totally changes, the outcome and what you should be even focusing on.
It's so interesting to have this discussion actually, because it's probably in some instances it's kind of counter to the other guests that we've had on as well, talking about the air cover, which I totally agree. And maybe I've missed something in how you're describing it, because there's a few follow-up questions off the back of this, Stuart. So I'm guessing you'll still do some like demand gen orientated stuff to create that demand in the first instance, that mind share. And obviously I like the way that you refer to it as like, the box that a customer would put it in their minds when they hear of something. So like, how do they categorize it? So of course, I understand the point when we get to a trigger point, and then content in service of the sellers. Yes, we're going past consideration, and how does content speed up consideration through to purchase? But at the top, driving that demand, I'm guessing you're still doing activity there, or no?
Mm-hmm.
Me, go if I'm wrong.
I was never an SEO guy. I came into the content world, as I said, through the narrative and the newsletter side of things. And so I always leaned into that as one of my, competitive advantages.
Got it.
And I like to call it sort of hand-to-hand content. You're going to write a newsletter and it's only going to be seen by the people who are subscribed. But those people who are subscribed are so much more engaged than think of a different demand gen experience where anyone is typing a bunch of random keywords into Google, and then there's a whole bunch of blue links and they'll click the first one and that's the end of their journey. Like, it feels to me like, why would I invest in, I understand there's like, that's how you reach new audiences, but why would you invest in the inferior experience that content can create when you have the opportunity to invest in these really great experiences? Then the question becomes like, okay, great. How do I get more people on the newsletter? Yes. Then there are, standard demand gen practices that you can do to drive more people to a sign up page, to have people opt in, on your website when they're, in a consideration phase. And you just say, actually, you want to subscribe to this newsletter, by doing partner events and webinars. We still do a lot of the always on types of content marketing that you'd expect from most B2B SaaS companies, but we do them with the intent of not going for MQLs and big numbers, but actually like what is going to jog our target market into realizing that this is an event or a webinar, something useful that they can go to or read, with the intent of like, then eventually it'll turn into an ABM motion. So I'm not concerned so much about at the individual level of like how many people. I'm thinking more about like account penetration, like how many accounts, what industries can I focus on that will drive intent and an interest from those targeted areas.
I'm with you. So really those more top of funnel activities, whether it's, so you mentioned newsletter a couple of times, obviously being your background, but you run a newsletter at Mutiny as well then? Or no?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So that was my first thing. It was like, I joined, and then Ryan Rod, the head of marketing, was like, well, what's the first thing you want to do? And I was like, well, all I know how to do is get a newsletter off the ground. So Mutiny's newsletter, I've been, publishing it weekly for 3 years now. And but you can see it in Gong call transcripts with salespeople. If you type, every once in a while I type newsletter into Gong, and it comes up in a lot of calls where, oh, I read this thing in the newsletter, it was really great. Or, oh yeah, I kind of, what made you book this meeting? It's like, oh, I was reading this thing in the newsletter. And then you can also go to like conferences and you meet someone and they're like, oh, Stuart from Mutiny, I read your newsletter. So it's like, cool. It's such a deeper experience than, oh, I've seen you on LinkedIn a few times, whatever. I scrolled right past.
I think this is a really important thing, and I really like the fact you brought up like Gong transcripts. I think this is a really important point where you can get that qualitative goodness to start, like those signals that really help inform the stuff that's very hard to be truly quantitatively driven on. So whenever we're, when businesses are questioning sometimes the impact of content marketing, because it's sometimes a little bit nebulous and hard to track, yada yada, those little kind of nuggets of insight that really help you understand that you're on the right track. And again, that kind of that personality led approach when they're like, oh, okay, like Stuart published it. Isn't just like a Mutiny newsletter. It's like they know who the person is who's publishing it. I think it's a really important step. All right. So that kind of clarifies, because I wasn't quite reconciling how that kind of goes into an ABM motion. So that makes sense for how like some of the newsletter and the webinars that typical, and those, I think those playbooks as well, which I've seen like downloads on the website. And is there an academy too? I was just browsing the site before we joined as well. What's that all about?
Yeah, I'll kind of rewind and kind of share a little bit more about the philosophy and a bit more of the strategy of why we've built these things over time. And you might, when you say all of those things at once, someone who's listening who might be on a one person or a very small content team is like, oh wow, that's a lot of work. And it is, but we built that over 3 years. It's not like we just do all that all the time all at once. And so one of the big kind of philosophies that we have at Mutiny is that if you're the always on content, the always on marketing, so that's social, newsletter, webinars, ads, BDR outreach, like those are necessary and create, good or drive results, but they're also baseline. Like they will never get you to the huge goals. If you're at a high growth company, those are flatline. And so you're only going to be able to hit those goals, at the same level every week. Yeah, sure. You can pour on more resources. You can up the cadence, but it's at the same time, it's still linear. It's like, it's just one, for every unit of effort or money you put in, you're going to get 1 unit of effort, or 1 unit of demand gen on the other side. So what do you do to, make it a little bit more exponential and create these big bumps in your numbers? Because always on is mandatory, but it's not going to win. Mm-hmm. So the way we think about it is we then we add in roughly quarterly campaigns that create a big noise in the market. And this is sort of the drumbeat that I feel like all companies could benefit from. Is it's exhausting to always try to be loud when you're doing your marketing, but being loud is really important because it gets you noticed for a short period of time and reminds people that you exist and develops that mind share further. So we do a combination of like always on marketing, and we try to, systematize it and optimize it so that takes up maybe 30% of your time. And so you have, regular cadence so people know that you're alive. But then you put most of your team's effort and energy and creative thinking and time towards like integrated marketing campaigns so everyone is talking about the same thing at the same time on all channels. And that might only last a week and a half, a week, 2 weeks. But you go like all in on one big idea every quarter and unify the whole marketing team to do it at the same time. So your ads are going to say the same message as your newsletter, as your blog post, as your social, as your webinar that you're going to put on, as the partner event. So you just like hit them from all angles with the same message and the same campaign. And that campaign needs to be timely and relevant. So it still should tie back to the product. It should still tie back to the pain points, but it needs to be something creative that like stands out as not just your always on content or marketing. It's something unique and big on top of that. So an example of something, a few that we've done, one, rewind a year and a bit, when ChatGPT was, really starting to kind of become mainstream, but people still didn't really know what AI was and what to do with it and all that stuff. So we created a video series. So there were 12 workshops where we found someone who had focused on a particular section of marketing and created an AI workflow. And we recorded really in-depth workshops with that person. And we gamified it. So we called it Survivor, but it was Serve AI-ver, like the game show or the reality TV show. And so it was all themed. It had a jungle vibe. There were immunity idols. There was, tribes. There was all this cool messaging around, it being a survivor style thing. It lasted 3 weeks because we had 12. So we did like 3 or maybe there was 9. Either way, it lasted there were 3 episodes a week. And then we gamified it so that people would get points for attending these sessions, for then submitting projects after the fact, for then doing other types of activities like liking us on LinkedIn and doing all the good, social selling kind of hygiene stuff that you can do to get people to give points. And we gave away 10K plus a whole bunch of other points in prizes, to the people who participated. So we made it like a big splash. Was it like directly tied to like Mutiny's core product? No, but we thought it was important to like throw our hat in the ring as an AI company that we want to be talking about AI and known for that. Did we still do like the always on channels? Yeah, but we pointed towards Survivor. It wasn't like at that moment, it's like book a demo, book a demo, book a demo, like every always on channel. It was, hey, let's snap you out of your days of being, beat over the head for demos. Why don't you just join this really cool campaign and learn a thing or two about how to use ChatGPT better? That's way more of an easy sell for your prospects. And so one, it like encourages your existing database of prospects to engage with your brand without being, overly salesy and, providing value in a whole bunch of different ways. But then it also acted as the demand gen top of funnel because it was cool and was interesting, and it drew in a whole bunch of, people who hadn't heard about Mutiny and hadn't done anything because maybe they wanted to win the prize. And then the reality of that is like, a big chunk of those people aren't going to be relevant buyers, but they still now are brand evangelists and love talking about us and, had a great experience. But the people in that pool who participated and were at target accounts and qualified buyers, were even more interested in having sales calls. And so that campaign drove over 2 million in pipe. It was a while ago, so I can't remember exactly the numbers, and had like over 5,000 participants. And you can see how that kind of compounds with the always on marketing to create that step function of like baseline plus campaign. And then following the campaign, there's that moment of goodwill where like for the months after that, all our metrics were up and to the right because of the like residual momentum of having all that. Plus it got to be repurposed as all my content for the always on channels for the next 3 months after that.
Very, very cool. Yeah, and it's amazing. It's like there's a brand halo effect applied to all of your like other always on activity, and I really love that delineation between always on drumbeat and the reality of like, it's not, you need it, it's a hygiene, not going to move the needle, we just need to continue doing it. But yeah, I really like the quarterly campaigns, and say like everyone's going to be galvanized around a single ambition. Then I think it's a really smart approach. Great. So that makes a whole load of sense now in terms of like strategy, routes to market, how you grow, etc. And a really solid playbook from a business that truly understands the power of content. There's one thing I did want to double click on though before we talk a little bit more about AI. Is like you mentioned the word like there's a trigger moment. So as people have spoken about demand gen, there's a trigger moment where a buyer becomes, starts to get more deeply into the consideration and purchase stages. So do you mind like pulling back the veil a little bit on what do you mean by trigger moment? How does that manifest? What are the next steps from that?
Mm-hmm. I learned this from working with Caitlin Burgoyne, because her whole the whole newsletter and her whole business is around buyer psychology and applying these very well-known psychological markers to consumer facing services. And so it's like, what do you need to know about the buyer journey before you can even start doing good marketing? Most people find themselves like running just towards a tactic just because they want to do it, because they think it's the right thing to do, without actually understanding the full story behind why a customer became a customer. And so I'd say like the biggest thing that someone can do is, it doesn't matter if you just joined a company or been at a company for a while, but have a conversation with one of your sellers, so one of your account executives, or someone who's like a closer, like a real person who will walk a prospect through and turn them into a customer. and ask them just like, why do people buy from us? And you'll get all the real details of what it is going through someone's mind when they reach out, they push the button that says like book a demo, and they seriously consider spending 10,000, like, tens of thousands of dollars of their company money and the time and the, putting their career, sticking their neck out to think that this tool is going to solve this problem that they have, because that's the real juice. Like, that's where you're going to find all the good stuff. What is this person thinking about? What's going through their head? What do they care about? What are they measured on? Why now? What are previous solutions look like in the past? What if they like scrap together out of free tools right now? You'd be amazed by how many, very successful companies and very successful programs are just like shoddily put together Google Sheets. Like, it is a very true statement that, like, if Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets disappeared, like, the entire world would just come to a screeching halt. And so, but that is the reality, though. It's like most likely your prospects are doing it manually in a spreadsheet or a doc and just have this great idea. And so what can you do to show them that actually your product solves exactly what they're looking for, plus all the other things? So that conversation, having one of those conversations is going to be like mind blowing for a lot of people, and they're going to realize all these things that they're doing are well intentioned, but actually not hitting on the right points and the right reasons why a person actually buys from you. So if you do it 3 times, if you do it 5 times, you're going to get more data points, because not every seller describes it the same way, but you're going to still kind of be able to pattern match and see what the real reason is, that, what are the triggers and what are the reasons why people buy from you. And then from there, you can then reverse engineer, okay, here are the messages, here's the things I need to be teaching our audience, and what is the best medium to do that. And so you kind of go from like insight and then backpedal to topics, and then from there into like medium, and then into back from that is then the last thing is like channels. It's like, okay, now how am I going to distribute this to get it in front of the right people? So you should do, like, everyone should do that. And, I need to do it more, but it's still like a great way of doing it. But to kind of what we talked about earlier is like the if you had a huge company and maybe there's like, it's difficult and there's layers of people and you don't know how to get in front of people and you don't like talking to people, go into the call transcripts of your sales team and just run those transcripts through your favorite AI tool, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT, and ask it questions being like, what problems does this prospect have? Why are they looking for this solution? Ask all the questions I kind of mentioned earlier, and you're going to be given the same results. So I'm looking forward to chatting about the AI stuff a little bit. You can obviously tell I bring it up every once in a while, because that is now, it used to happen manually, but now I think that is one of the biggest opportunities for a content person, is to become the orchestrator of turning call transcripts that your company is creating every single day, hundreds of hours of calls that your company is having every day, without any extra effort on your part, using AI to turn those into content insights, first drafts, and mediums that you would have like only dreamed possible beforehand, is now like totally easy to do.
I think that's the perfect segue, right? And I think it feels like it's a good time to talk about, like, I think a post you published maybe like a week ago, or LinkedIn or something like that, where I think there was like 5 or so steps of like AI maturity, right? So first, like a creative partner, hey, just asking ChatGPT or Claude to churn out a social post. Get it? Fine. But there's obviously, that's just the entry step. So
I'll pull it up too. I'll remember what I said. Yeah, exactly. I kind of, the way I've been exploring it, I've come across 5 steps, and I think, or 5 stages, and I'm pretty sure that, every it feels like every 2 weeks I'm my understanding of what AI is going to impact in the world, it just like is completely rewritten. because every time it launches something new, it's just like, oh, that's going to change everything. So, there's probably going to be an infinite number of steps eventually, but right now I see 5 on the horizon that like every content person, every marketer really can kind of like start leveraging AI in certain ways. So as you mentioned, stage 1 is using AI as like an ad hoc creation partner. This is this is where 90% of people are currently. You have a ChatGPT account, you have a Claude account, you have a Gemini account, whatever. And every time you use it, it's more just like you kind of start from the beginning. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, I want to write something. I want to create this asset, whatever. And you use it as an editing partner and you go back and forth and conversationally turn it into a draft, a script, or whatever it is that is like close enough that you're like, okay, cool, this was useful to me. The models are becoming way better. So like, a year ago in 2013, if I told people that they would actually be getting like production ready content through using ChatGPT, they'd be like, no, it's not good enough. But trust me, it is right now. I'm getting way better results now. And, so you improve on your ability to like interact with it in an ad hoc manner. Step 2 then is like where everyone wants to get to, which is like, okay, great. Like I see that using ChatGPT can be helpful, but it's still time consuming. How do I create workflows, or how do I build it into a workflow that allows for that repeatability and consistency? So this maps to like those always on channels that we talked about. Is you're not going to trust AI to create your social posts until it is able to be so consistent in its tone, in its style, that you're actually like, I would, this is as good or better than outsourcing this to, like a lower level copywriter or someone who's, owns that channel. So the second step is like create workflows that amplify your existing production and distribution systems. I think distribution is an area I'm still trying to figure out. Like, I don't think AI is really good at content distribution yet, but like once someone figures out what the tool is to like get your content all over the place, I think the biggest opportunity for AI tools is to like replace all the copy and pasting that we do as a content person inherently. Like most of your job is spent copy and pasting it from one doc to another or whatever. So I really want someone to replace the manual copy and pasting. But anyways, stage 2 is like repeatability. Once you get repeatability and you create these workflows, it's essentially just like a whole bunch of layered prompts where it passes information from one AI, like, one step. I'll give you an example actually of what step 2 looks like. You have a transcript from a conversation, a sales conversation, and you want to turn it into a use case snippet, like a really short blog that like mentions one use case and gives it in great detail. Cool. The workflow would look something like this. Drop in the transcript. Given this transcript, this is you asking the AI, given this transcript, extract the most interesting and novel insights from this, specifically focusing on use cases of using Mutiny that the prospect or the seller talked about. List list the problem that this person was having, list why this use case is going to solve this problem, and then list the steps that is required for a person to follow this use case. Then it extracts that information. Then you say, given this voice document of like how my company talks, given this format prompt of the format I want the end result to look like, that's how you get the consistency, is you give it an example of what you want it to look like. And given a little bit more instructions and direction of like the context of where this thing is going to appear, turn those insights into a finished blog post following all these steps. And the resulting draft that's going to spit out is going to be 90% of the way there. I guarantee you, once you are able to learn how to like pass the output of a prompt into another prompt and then have it execute another prompt, and you layer all these prompts and you chain them together, that's how you get repeatability using AI. So that's level 2. And that's like, that changes the whole game, because now those always on channels run themselves, which is crazy. But you're still getting human insights because you're feeding it transcripts. And that's a really important thing, is don't just ask AI to create stuff for you point blank. You need to give it a transcript. You need to give it notes. You need to give it context. You need to give it whatever medium or like format works best for you. You just need to give it ideas, because now that everyone can use AI to do this workflow, the internal knowledge and the thought leadership that your company has is going to need to shine through in this way. All right. Step 2. Am I totally lost you at this point, or is this keep going?
Step 2 has definitely appeared a few times already. So step 1,
yep.
Great. Do you want to summarize where you got to so far? And let's continue to the next one.
All right, sounds good. Step 3 is now using the AI to actually aggregate that source material. So when I say source material, that is the proprietary knowledge that your company is generating on a given day. That's, I keep going back to sales calls just because they're so abundant and they're so underutilized. And I guarantee that 90% of the people listening to this have access to them at their company and won't require any extra permissions to go get them. So these use them as your source material. So I kind of touched on this with step 2, but like, now that you've built the system that's running, now you can go focus on improving your prompts to extract even more novel insights from your transcripts, from podcasts that your founders have done, from previous blog posts that you've written. Get crazy with it. Like if you see that there is existing documentation that your company is putting out, copy and paste it, drop it into your AI and start messing with it and see what you can come up with, because that is like unlocks all the institutional knowledge that otherwise you would have needed to like interview someone manually, transcribe it yourself, think about how these themes work together, have AI do all that for you. And I think there's going to be a lot of new ways we can do that in the future. So now we're at stage 4, which I haven't seen really anyone get to this stage yet in a meaningful way. So, to listeners who are already like, oh shit, I'm at stage 1. Now am I ever going to catch up? It's like no one's past stage 3 yet. So don't even worry. Like this is so new that and there's only one way to get good at it. Don't take any courses. Don't sign up for anything you don't need to. Just start doing it. Sign up for free trials of tools. Experiment with it. If it doesn't work the way you want it to work, get rid of it. There's another AI tool right behind it that will probably solve the problem you have. So stage 4 now is like, okay, I've got the insights coming in. I've got the formats are being created. This is still like your existing marketing strategy with a layer of AI on top of it, helping you to execute it. But what happens now if you totally throw out your marketing strategy and use AI to like come up with new modes of presenting that information? So right now, we're still kind of stuck. We're limited by the mediums in which we can present information. It's like we've got written content, we've got video content, we've got audio content, and we've got some level of like interactive website thing. But that's kind of like, those are the 3 mediums in which we're able to present our ideas and get our message out to the world. What does it look like when you are now using like AI generated video plus AI generated audio plus AI generated, real-time interaction experiences, whereas based on what someone does, it changes the whole, way a website looks and how it, how it feels and whatever. We're not even getting into like augmented reality or virtual reality. Like we're still far away from that as like a meaningful marketing channel. But it starts to become like this thought exercise of like, what will mediums look like in the future, and how can I transform from one medium to another? Which is, you'll probably hear multimodal come out a lot with when it comes to AI. So that's the concept of like moving between mediums. So you speak to your AI and then it types back to you or creates a video to you. That's like voice to text or voice to audio. Now there's like, there's all these mediums that we can input information. and there's all these mediums we can output information. Now we can go multimodal in every direction. So the production ability that your company has now is crazy, where it's like, you might used to need like a podcast, team, you needed a video team, you needed an audio team. Now it's like, if we have a written blog post, that can turn into all those different assets in a single step. So step 4 is like multimodal, where we start to actually think about, we're like AI first in our creation, not like using AI to do the work we would have otherwise done.
Yeah.
So
really,
I don't know anyone doing that yet, but that's cool to me.
it's like, yeah, it feels like there's like a chasm. Well, it's actually a chasm between a lot of them. There's a big chasm between step 1 and then 2 and 3, but between going to like, hey, I'm using it as like dabbling ad hoc in stage 1 to like stage 2 and 3, and like, okay, now I'm using it to truly reinforce my creative processes and operating model. Big chasm again, then to stage 4, which is multimodal. Like, what could it be? I don't really quite know what could it be. So like text to podcast, for example, I'm sure you probably saw what happened, like a test with Notebook LM and all that stuff. So there's just a lot of cool stuff, and very emergent too. So
very emergent. The best place to find these weirdos that are coming up with these new multimodal like things, for me it's still Twitter. Like, I don't even know how I find them. They just like magically appear on my feed, and it's usually just some dude like experimenting with a new tool and like sharing what they found. And it's not commercial. Like there's it's up to you to find a reasonable use case and a reason why you're going to implement it into your program. But as marketers, we need to be like, there's frontier people out there who are just like they're grinding on these tools, they're using all their AI credits just to mess with it and push it to its limits. It's your job to like notice these patterns and be like, okay, that's super interesting. How can I do the 80-20 and like learn 80% of what I need to learn very quickly? And then is there room for me to apply this at my company? And that's how you kind of like get ahead of the curve and show and start using tactics that other people haven't used before.
Stage 5.
Just to put a bookend on it, stage 5 plus, we don't know how many stages are going to be after this. That's sort of when we get into what's being called like agentic. So like creating AI agents who just go and do this for you. That's actually probably stage 4.5 ish, where you've got the processes in place, you've got everything going. So now an agent can jump in and just like do it for you. But what's the human going to be doing in this scenario? And what I think that looks like for a human in stage 5 plus is like really nailing one-to-one content personalization, plus like real-time audience engagement, plus cross-platform orchestration. Like, I'm not really sure exactly what this is going to look like, but it's essentially going to be like every person in your market will have a completely unique buying experience across all the channels in which which exist in the future, all the way up until they become a customer. Like no one's going to go through the same experience, and there's going to be agents along the way who are creating content based on what this person does, creating content based on this person's language and where they live, creating content based on stuff that's happening at their company, like real-time signals. Everything is going to look different in the future. So I don't know what that is, but I feel like it's going to be totally wild. And maybe we'll record another episode in 18 months. We'll be 6+, and our lives will be totally different.
It's so interesting, and to be honest, this is really underpinning the reason I decided to reach out to you to be on this podcast, because following you on LinkedIn and the posts that you were creating about this kind of stuff, I found very interesting, and so I'm really pleased that we've managed to like put some of this out there, and it is so emergent. And I know you're very mindful of this. Like, I don't want anyone listening to this to feel like they're way behind, because most people really are at stage 1 here. Really, would that be your take too?
I was recently at a marketing conference, and it was all marketers there, a very legit crowd. everyone there, everyone was deep into their careers. We're real practitioners at real legit companies. And we had a little content breakout, and I kind of doubt, I was like, do you guys want to talk about AI? I know most people are a little, there's a 50-50 whether someone's going to be offended or really excited to talk about AI.
Yeah.
And they're all like, yeah, okay, as long as it's interesting, whatever. And I kind of presented, how I've built workflows. So like how I went from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. And they're all like, holy shit, I had no idea this is possible, or how that's even a place to go. And I didn't think of how AI would be used in that situation. So that's like the best marketers that I know we're all together, and they were like blown away by step 2 and 3. So like that's how nascent this is. And so my recommendation for everyone who wants to get on board with this is like, yes, there's going to be a little bit of like ego you're going to need to shed around, what your role used to be, and the like, like I got into it as a writer. Like I loved writing. That was my competitive advantage. I was a little faster than everyone else, and I had a good tone, and people liked reading it. But if you're like a purist and you don't think that people are going to want to read AI written writing, it's like fine, but you need to know that those who are able, figuring out how to make it part of your workflow and shed the identity of like, oh, I'm a writer, to being like, no, if you want to stay in marketing and still be a marketer, you need to be a marketer first, because this is not art. This is like applied art. This is commercialized art. So you need to be okay with that and like move towards opportunities to be really good at marketing. You can still write manually at home, whatever, but if this is available to the market, you're going to need to learn how to use it. So a little bit of, ego shedding and a few nights, like sleepless nights, legitimate, like, realizing what the hell does head of content do if I'm no longer, creating content? What's my purpose now? A little bit of existential crisis, but once you get through those, trust me, you will get through them. Only two restless nights and playing with AI, and then you'll be like on the other side, and you're like, okay, I have control of this. I know how to use it. I'm getting better every day. I'm figuring out new use cases for myself, and I'm like producing better quality, more interesting work as I go. So I think it's just going to unlock creativity for all of us so that we can focus on really fun, cool, creative campaigns and not get, tied into the always on boring stuff that most people want to grow out of anyways.
I love that. I think that's such a wonderful way of contextualizing it. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, I think we're all suffering with a bit of AI fatigue as well. So it can be, because it's just everywhere, especially in the marketing industry. So it can be kind of tempting to switch off. But I think you can textualize it in a really balanced way, as in like, you've gone through the journey of discomfort, and to be honest, you probably still feel quite a degree of discomfort. I'm like, because we're always in the unknown. We're always pushing our boundaries of like, okay, we can do this now. It's always changing. That's sometimes uncomfortable and sometimes incredibly exciting. But the way you've kind of structured it as part of your workflow in between, like, yeah, we got the always on, but I mean, did you really want to write 10,000 words every week? Probably not, right? So, being able to like structure that into a really solid workflow where your content's 90% done anyway in your always on, but you can still flex your creative muscle in those campaigns that you do every quarter where, yeah, to this point, like that still needs a human spark of creativity to really bring that to life. And I think if you strip back everything, or like really get it down to the heart of it, and I think you mentioned this on a recent LinkedIn post actually, Stuart, which is like, a lot of stuff can be copied, a lot of stuff can be commoditized in marketing. You've mentioned that people have swiped your landing page copy and style or whatever, but like the personality of the brand still shines through. So that is still an utterly crucial element. So whilst, yes, lots can be outsourced to AI and be a creative partner, there's still a degree of humanity to the business, even in a business that's so AI powered like Mutiny, that still shines through. Is that my kind of take of that correct, Stuart?
Yeah, absolutely. Like well, the reality is like AI is trained on our data. So if you have a good personality, you can just say, copy this personality, and it will know how to do it. Like it's scary at first. You're like, wow, there's going to be no original work out there anymore. I think that's like completely wrong. It's going to mean that everything is going to become original. And it's you as the operator who's using these tools to apply your taste. And guess what? AI is going to actually help you refine your taste and understand what is uniquely yours. One crazy, a new feature in a tool called Midjourney, which is like an image creator app, where you type in, a description of what you want to see, and it creates it for you. They added this new feature called style reference. Actually, sorry, they added two features that really were like paradigm shifts for me. I was like, whoa, this is going to happen for every AI tool I use now. One was called style reference, where it becomes essentially like a giant lookbook of styles that are like so unique in their aesthetic that, and we're so bad at describing things, whereas AI is amazing at describing things. So you and I would look at this picture, and the thing is this style reference is just a number. It's not even given a name. It's just like 139854331 style reference. It means nothing to us, but means everything to the AI. And so if you type that, you could do a prompt and like, cup of coffee on a desk in a green mug, style reference 1234. It will look totally unique from coffee mug, green coffee mug on a desk, style reference 1235. And it will be completely different. And you'll look at them, and it's up to you to figure out, do I like style A or style B more? And that's going to be applied to like everything we work with AI from now on. And then the second feature that I think is really interesting is the personalization side of it. The more you use AI, the more it understands you. And at first we kind of thought that, by using ChatGPT, everyone's content is going to look the exact same. But it's actually not going to, because the more you use ChatGPT, the more it knows about you and the more it knows what you like. And so just by using the tool, your outputs are going to be better and they're going to be more yours. And so no one's ChatGPT instance is going to be the same way. Like when if I were to use your computer and go on your browser, I'd be like, what the hell? I don't know how does Andy even like do his work? I hate how he has his computer set up. It's going to feel the exact same way when you use like your AIs are going to be your AIs. And so by giving more context and it then adapts the personalization. And so when you turn on personalization in Midjourney, same thing, coffee cup in a green mug sitting on a desk, it will look with no style reference, just your personalization. It will look so good to you because it's what is in your mind is now like in the AI. And so that's just like visually, it's super easy to understand that because, people have visual, like we're much more visual, I feel like attuned. But now just think about that concept as it applies to like everything, and every place we engage with AI and every way we use AI to create. Everyone is going to have their own AIs, and it's still your taste, but now it's removed the barrier of like, I don't know how to do this skill. It's like, don't worry, AI knows how to do the skill and it knows how to apply your taste to that new thing.
Love it. What a brilliant take on it. And I'm so pleased we went deep on it, and your passion comes through on this. So glad. I know I wanted to get some of the kind of like tactical stuff out first, because it's great to understand how a business like Mutiny has grown, but really glad we went deep into your workflows, which clearly have like revolutionized the way we use that word fairly frequently, but like I think it truly it's representative of what's actually happened to your role as head of content, right? The volume and velocity at which you can create content now is, it's changed forevermore. So with that, is there anything that you'd like the audience to take away from now? Any kind of next actions you'd like to take before we close out today?
No, I mean, I love kind of what I alluded to earlier when I said that like podcasting was my way of like connecting with people. None of us live in the same office, work in the same office, live in the same cities anymore. So, you and I didn't know each other until we just bumped into each other on LinkedIn. And I don't remember who messaged first, but one takeaway that's like unrelated to AI or marketing is like always message people first on LinkedIn. Like if you see someone that looks interesting, just send them a note saying, hey, thanks for connecting, excited to learn more about your work. And then if you get the vibe that they're interested in chatting, book a time, get their calendar, find a time for a 15-minute chat. I can't recommend that enough to anyone at any stage of your career. The more people you know, the better, and you can just have such a more interesting career by being out there. And you don't need to be even producing content, but just by being connected, quietly connected through the DMs of LinkedIn or whatever you prefer to use, like it goes so far. And so I would say that is a more of a general advice that has served me well, and I hope that other people take.
I love it. Very, very solid advice, and it's something that I live by too. So Stuart, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for sharing all this insight and knowledge with us. And I'm sure I'd direct anyone to go follow you on LinkedIn if they've liked the kind of things that you said about AI. And thank you for sharing all of your learning so openly. And I love this whole kind of learning in public. We haven't all got it figured out, but we're for those that are willing to share as they're going through the process of learning and figuring it out, hugely valuable for others to learn from you. So thank you, and see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. It was great.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Social 3.0. I really hope you found this episode useful, and please, if you found it useful, do go ahead and share a like or a comment on Spotify or wherever you consume your podcast, because it helps the podcast grow. Also, if there's ever any guest that you think would be really great on this episode, do let me know and intro me. That would be so useful. But otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye.